Whenever I'm talking to entrepreneurs and founders, I'm always recommending some books. All are specific books that I have used. All right, today I want to come to you with some kind of a fun. I'm a lover of books, and whenever I'm talking to entrepreneurs and founders, I'm always recommending some books. So today I have kind of two stacks here. One is around marketing and kind of the initial business concepts that I think are so important to startups, to entrepreneurs, to founders. And then this stack is kind of near and dear to my heart. This is sales and business development. All are specific books that I have used. Why this stack is kind of separate, and I want to emphasize a little bit, because I think oftentimes founders and entrepreneurs come to their startups with a little bit of product and maybe service knowledge. That's probably what inspired them to bring something into the marketplace because of a problem they saw, something they're trying to arbitrage, or maybe scratching their own itch. But rarely have they been in a situation where they need to promote or sell the actual product or service that they're bringing. And so I think for a long time we've been under this false impression that bringing the best product to the market will always win out in the end. And I think there's a lot that needs to be learned inside of these type of books in order to actually make sure that your excellent, no doubt, product and service gets a fair shot in the market. So I want to go through each of these a little bit. I'm going to start with the marketing and business stack first. I think this is a critical. This is probably one of the newer ones in my collection. You can see I've kind of gone to some oldies but goodies. But again, specifically, all of these I have used and I think have made an impact in the businesses that I've started up and the clients that I've worked with. Why I think this one's so important. This is Nicolas. You've probably seen him. He's very prolific on the internet and writing, but specifically he is a little bit, I guess, counterintuitive or has a contrarian view set around content creation and particularly writing. And in particular, I think, right off in the first chapter, he shows that he's a little bit different, and he kind of leads with the advice, don't start a blog. And I'm in agreement with this because whenever you're starting a blog, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs think, hey, that's the first thing I need to do, because they do get that it is important if I'm introducing a new idea or concept to the market that I probably need to influence people. I need to share and kind of open my mind so that people can see what I'm thinking and why I think there's an emerging trend or something different or a better way to do things. And writing is a great way to do that. The problem is, by starting with a blog or a website, you're essentially burying it, because until that blog or website has some credibility, has some discoverability, there's probably some SEO that needs to occur and just time for people to be able to discover it and then promote it. It's literally going to just be a ghost town with tumbleweed moving through it. However, instead of starting that blog, by finding some platforms where your ICPs already are and starting to share your insights can be really powerful. Lots of other stuff in here that, again, is a little bit contrarian, but certainly works, and I can attest to this because I've obviously used this as well. The next two I want to share are kind of classics. So this is the one that often gets shared with everyone. And this is Dotcom Secrets from Russell Brunson, the founder of ClickFunnels. And this is a great book. This book came out first, and it tells a lot about sort of how to do digital marketing and how to generate leads, be able to sort of get that audience, get that loyalty behind you, create the funnels and those sorts of things. You will see, if you take a look at this particular book and everything that's in here, this one is least mentioned, and I think much more powerful. And the reason I think that this particular one is powerful is because I really believe, especially for founders and entrepreneurs, in selling expertise. Because again, this is why you're in the market probably, is you have some expertise or you have some unique visibility or insight into a trend or something that should be different or better. And selling and communicating that expertise is far more valuable than just maybe using some generic marketing tactics. So I really like to kind of go from this perspective, and I always recommend this particular book of Russell Brunson's. And again, he does a great job of just like really breaking things down into practical, actionable steps. So this is what I would recommend there. Okay, now we're going to get into two business books that I think are really powerful. Now, this first one is a little bit controversial, and you can probably see by it, it looks a little bit old. This was published, I can even find the title page. This was, published in, copyright 1993. This particular one was published in 95. This is a ruthless book, right? And it's talking about doubling your profits. One thing that I got in trouble with a couple different times on my entrepreneurial journey is not really understanding the concept of business and financial management inside of the context of a business, right? So there are a lot of ways that little tiny expenses can get away. People that it's not their money, that are maybe employees of you, kind of use that without as much stewardship as you would expect, or even just thinking about the impact and the return on that. But most entrepreneurs, most founders are kind of at least initially working out of their own pocketbook, and there's a tendency for you to kind of use it or operate much like you do your family checkbook. And it just doesn't work like this. And this talks about just going through ruthlessly, always evaluating what you truly need and where all the money is going. And I'm never like this, the biggest fan of always like cutting expenses, but it is important to understand the trade-offs that you're making for every single dollar that goes out and making sure that it's effective. And this really highlights this. It also gives you some tactics in negotiating. This is probably where it gets the most controversial in negotiating with vendors and other things that you buy. There's some tactics in here. There's also, again, this is where it gets controversial, being more pragmatic and honest with yourself about the employees that you have and the people that are around you and helping you and making sure that you always have the best people providing the best value. And ultimately, that's important for your whole team. So if you ever run a team and you had somebody that's kind of not pulling their weight, the rest of the team kind of questions why they need to pull their weight. So again, this is a ruthless book. There will be points in this, myself included, where I don't feel comfortable with his advice, but it is a great way to really honestly and intentionally look through your business for things that are probably not working as effectively as they should. This is a little bit of a similar sort of context, but takes a different approach. This book specifically got me out of a really hard time. One, as often is the case with startups and businesses, they'll go through kind of high points and low points, and this was a particular low point when I encountered this book. I was bleeding with the business. I had a significant amount of debt built into the business, and I had to fight my way out or collapse the business. And this is the playbook that got me through that and actually got me to a place that was hugely profitable and ended up having a strong exit, primarily because of the book and the tactics that it talks about in here. Again, this helps with that misperception around kind of running your business like your family checkbook, right? Talks about sort of bucketing things, understanding kind of how money works inside of a business, and also, and I think this is really important, some of the things that are unique that you need to account for in a business that you don't need to account for in your family checkbook. Things like payroll. Payroll is coming. Cash flow is important. Vendors, unlike your employer, don't always pay on time. In fact, most don't pay on time. So you have to kind of account for that. In some cases, there's use tax or other types of sales tax that you have to account for. for your taxes in a small business are generally not taken out for you. So you have to understand Social Security taxes, all the things around employees, and then potentially taxes that you're going to be responsible for and how to kind of plan for this. So this is critical because they don't teach us in school. They don't seem to teach any finance in school, and they certainly, nobody teaches you how to run a business from a financial aspect, and this is probably the number one killer of great businesses, is just not understanding how this works. Now, I'm kind of going to some of my favorite part is sales. So this, for me, is really interesting because obviously I run agencies, and those agencies, I've been in different verticals, different industries, and those sorts of things. But the interesting thing about me and agencies is most agencies are created by a creative, and they sort of grow into a business. Maybe they're a graphic artist, maybe they're a writer, and again, there's some sort of creative, and they just start to try to scale it, and they sort of become an agency. In my particular case, I became an agency somewhat out of necessity because my software business collapsed on me because of some market factors back in the financial implosion, or as I would call it, because this was my audience, or ICP, the mortgage meltdown. So out of necessity, I sort of pivoted to an agency, but my strength has always been sales and business development, but it is a skill that I had to acquire. This is not what I was classically trained in, right? I'm a political science major. I do have an MBA, but sales was not my curriculum. When I made this pivot from the software business, and probably should have been doing this before because we weren't as effective at sales, I was like, I have to sell this stuff. So this was the first book that I picked up, and this is actually the book that I picked up when I started the business because I realized I had to sell. I had hired a couple salespeople. They weren't able to sell anything, which is, again, another pretty classic startup experience. This is an old book, but I think it's a classic. Jeffrey Gitomer is kind of the OG when it comes to sell. Now, I love this book, and probably classic. You can make fun of me as a salesperson because I'll embrace that. Basically, this is, some people might say, a little bit of a book with pictures. But I love this. And again, it's super basic. There are a lot of just essential frameworks in here, broken down in an easy way to kind of learn them, to practice them, giving you scenarios. Obviously, at this time when this was built, a lot of this is focused on cold calling or calling. But I think even in this day and age, this is a really good and interesting first place to start because we're on Zoom and we're selling a one-to-one, belly-to-belly again. And there for a while, we weren't. We were doing a lot of digital stuff, transactional stuff, even as a SaaS. But whether you're doing SaaS and you're doing transactional type of sales, this will still be powerful in sort of negotiating or larger partner deals. Again, fun, a lot of little essentials. Easy to kind of quick and take an actionable stance. So I still stand behind this is a great sales book to have on your bookshelf. The other thing, this is from an agency perspective, and I think from an enterprise sales perspective, this is probably one of my favorites to recommend, and that is Win Without Pitching Manifesto. This is probably the closest to the way that I sell. I like to sell with expertise. I like to sell in kind of a collaborative and educational way. And again, this is a little bit of a manifesto. You can see short books, I think, in this category are really good, right? Because they have the essentials. You can pick little pieces of them out here, and you can work with them. And you can work through them as you're trying to learn and make this, because sales is really a contact sport, right? You're in it. It's a conversation, and the conversation will go all kinds of different ways. So I think it's really important to constantly be sort of thinking through that and giving yourselves different tool sets to be able to make them sort of natural in those conversations and just making you better at doing that. Here's Here's another one. You can see I tend to like some controversial ones. So this is Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street. Some of you have probably seen the movie. The movie's certainly not going to teach you sales skills. You may not love the guy after you read the movie, but there's no question that he is an incredible salesperson. This book, I think a lot of people don't know about, is really about his sales process. And he's got a concept called straight line selling. And the core concept here, at least the way I implement it and I take it, is really having a clear understanding of that path, that happy path, if you will, from the start of the conversation to actually getting a deal closed or done. And understanding the different steps and road marks or landmarks along that path are really critical, because what it allows you to do is, if you understand what you need to do, what you need to achieve with the client, and what you need to do all the way through each step in that process, you can take all kinds of side roads and adventures and journeys because you know what that is, and you can kind of get back on course, sort of like a GPS, right? You can wander off, you can take a turn off, you can check something out over here. GPS will get you back onto that straight line. And that's really the core concept here. You can always tell in my books when I've got the notes. Unlike a lot of books, and this is why I encourage you to kind of stick with this one, unlike a lot of books, all of the power, at least the most useful part I thought, was in the back. You can see all my core notes are in the back. Actually, this page really kind of blew up with some notes. The beginning, I think there's a lot of throat clearing in this particular one, but as you get towards the back of the book, that's where all the juice is. So I encourage you, if you're going to pick this one up, to spend some time in the back of that, because that's where it really gets meaty. So those are my 8 essential references or books that you should have as an entrepreneur. So I think those are the best places to start. I have a couple of bonuses. So one of the things that I learned later, and I'm a big believer in, is lead generation wins the day. So if I were to start with like the most current books, these Alex Hormozis are kind of the new Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels. So these expert in Dotcom, I think these guys are probably the current version of this. And there's a lot of overlap, but these are kind of really interesting. They're kind of, you can see they're almost like workbooks, again, with the typical theme. They're a little bit sort of books with pictures, right? But don't underestimate these things. These are super powerful. By the time I picked these up, I was pretty versed in all of this, and this is kind of what I use to generate demand and leads for a lot of my clients. But I already had these kind of in my arsenal, but he does a nice job of documenting. So if you're going to try to do it yourself, these are 2 bonus books that I would suggest. So hopefully that gets you started. I think, again, super essential. Understand how to run that business, make sure that you understand how to promote your products and service, create some demand, and then ultimately sell it, right? Bring it all the way to a closed transaction. If you enjoyed it, you've been here till this point, I would encourage you to like and subscribe to my channel here, and I'll see you on the next one.